Welcome to the Build on Beauty podcast, where beauty is born skin deep. Now, here's your host, author, speaker, entrepreneur, Cornell Jermaine.
Hello. Thank you so much for joining me here for another episode of the Build on Beauty podcast. This is your host, Cornell Jermaine. I appreciate you tuning in. We are here at the close of yet another year. I'm telling you, I don't know where the time has went. It seems as if we just entered 2017 and here we are at the end of it. We're so grateful here that you have continued to tune in, to listen, and to partake in that which we have to share with you here on the podcast. It's been an amazing year, and we have some great, amazing things yet to come in the future. I wanted to stop, and I started something last year that I want to continue. I wanted to stop to take inventory on all the episodes that we've done this year, and out of those episodes, pick the few that spoke to me or give you some insights on some of the ones that may have been our top rated or most listened to. Well, this year I decided to pick 5 that actually I enjoyed, and not that I don't enjoy them all, but there are 5 that really stuck out to me this year, and for many different reasons. And I wanted to just share with you some behind the scenes on the guest, the stories that I don't get to often share on the episode, and some insights, onto what may have happened and what I may have taken away from that particular episode. So here we go. So first up at the number 5 spot in our top 5, we have our episode with Sherry Riley, Exponential Living. This is episode number 47. I met Sherry through a colleague of mine. I believe it was late 2016, and had the opportunity to learn of her story and the great book that she had written, and was very intrigued by her story, and ultimately met her and fell in love with her personality. I mean, she is one of the most sweetest persons I've met in our episodes thus far. Very sweet, very genuine, very soft-spoken, but very powerful when it comes to the message and the things that she has to share. And she shared with us on episode 47 some great insights, and I won't give you everything. Go back and refer to that episode and listen when you have time, but just a little bit about her story. She grew up in a town in Kentucky and always had a desire to be in the entertainment business, and from that desire she knew that she wanted to live in Atlanta and work in some facet of entertainment. So she was led to Atlanta and worked there for some time, ended up meeting R&B superstar Mr. Gerald Levert, and after working with him was led to an opportunity to work with the one and only Babyface, Kenneth Babyface Edmonds, and Ellie Reed of LaFace Records. She became the marketing director for LaFace Records, and she worked with big names like Tony Braxton, TLC, Usher, just to name a few. And that work she did with them led her to really accomplish some amazing things in her career. But at the same time, she was left with this desire to do more and be more and spread her wings. And there was an encounter that she talks about that she had with Usher that ultimately fueled that desire to move out and open her own company, actually, and then go into life strategy work, which is one of the things that she does now. In her book, Exponential Living, she talks about that story, but she gives us some practical tips on exactly what exponential living is. And what it is, from her perspective, is that we live out the fullness of our life, both professionally and personally. And she came up with a catchphrase that I thought was very, very poignant. And it is, stop spending 100% of your time on 10% of who you are. And when she said that, I was like, okay, let me take that in. It was one of those moments where you just stop and say, okay, wow. Okay, let's think about that. And when I thought about that, I said, wow, this is basically a statement that's telling us And it's particularly, in my opinion, for those who are driven, those who have ambition, those who have goals and aspirations and want to do great things in their life. And a lot of times we can become unfocused on other areas that we ultimately want for our life. There are many people who are professionally, taking the world by storm. They are doing amazing things and accomplishing great things in their professional life, but there are areas in their personal life that they totally ignore because of this drive and this passion that they have professionally. And at the end of the day, it leaves them somewhat unfulfilled. And what she's basically saying in that thought is, think about the things that fulfill you. Think about the things that bring you this sense of purpose and fulfillment in life, and spend your time in all of those areas, because it is possible to have the balance of both professional and professional. Both professional and personal excellence. It is possible to have the balance. So she talks about how you can take your life back. In essence, that in so many words, she talks about how you can take your life back, and you can do all that you want to do professionally and still have the personal accomplishment and fulfillment that you want in life. There's some things that she speaks about, and I'll speak about them briefly. She speaks on 3 different things that she says are the key to having an exponential life, and that is peace, clarity, and courage. And she talks about peace. She talks about how peace is a decision, and how we can have peace in any moment. We can choose to have peace in any situation in our life. And I think that is so very true. We often blow up at situations or make a big deal out of stuff that we often can say, you know what, let me pause, let me think about this thing, and let me approach this in a place of peace. And that is sometimes a very challenging thing to do, because emotionally it may stir us. Emotionally it may cause things to come up that we may not have known we had. When people get angry, sometimes they do silly and things that ultimately they regret. But she was saying that we can choose peace, and ultimately in choosing peace, we obtain clarity. And in that clarity is where we get the answers that we need in order to find the solutions to whatever the problems may be. And I said, you know what, that is so true in this regard, because you can't have clarity if you're walking around angry, upset, blowing up, and going off. It's almost impossible, in my opinion, to have clarity of thought and be able to find a solution to the problem if you're choosing to act out and react versus approaching it in a place of peace and finding that serenity in order to find clarity and then the answers. And she then says courage is the thing that we need in order to take the clarity that we get and actually change our situation for the better. So that episode with Exponential Living, Sherry Riley, was very key, and I thought it should be on my top 5, just because I think there are so many people who are living their lives less than exponentially, and I think this exponential living is not just for professionals and people who want to have great, amazing careers. I think it's for people who are also personally, because sometimes we have it on the opposite spectrum. Sometimes you have people who personally have it all. They wanted the picket fence and the big home and the big family and the husband and the wife, and they get it, and they realize that, wow, I have this and I love this and I adore this part of my life, but then there are other things that I wanted to do and I haven't been able to do them because I've given all of my life to these individuals or to this person, and they find themselves at the end of their life, sometimes wishing they had stepped out and did some things that they wanted to do. So it doesn't always have to be on the side of the professional. A lot of times we give big executives and people who are doing great things entrepreneurially, professionally, or what have you, we give them the bad rap because we often think that they just disregard all areas of life that have nothing to do with their business or their profession. They forsake their spouse, or they leave their kids abandoned and all. And that's not always the case. That's not always the case, because sometimes there are people who have all of that, they have the spouse and the kids and the family, and professionally they are void. They are void professionally because they have things that they wanted to do and they just never did it because they chose not to put themselves first. And so I think on both ends of the spectrum, we can learn how to live exponentially and how to learn how to balance that professional and personal lifestyle in order to still have fulfillment and have excellence in our life, but also have the things that make us happy and make us at the end of the day smile. So check out that episode, and by all means check out Sherry's book, Exponential Living. I think you would definitely be blessed by that. And for those that may not know, the foreword to that book was done by Usher Raymond himself, who has worked very closely with Sherry throughout the years. And even though they're not working on the same label together anymore, they have maintained a beautiful friendship. And we got a chance to meet him at the book signing. I was invited to the premiere book signing for Sherry's book in Atlanta, and I went down, and to our surprise, Usher was one of the guest speakers to speak on Sherry's behalf, and it was a beautiful event. And he and she were both gracious and kind and very excited about this new leap in Sherry's professional life. So we are applauding Sherry Riley on all that she has going on, and definitely check out that episode, check out that book. I think it would definitely be a great blessing to you. Number 4 on the list, episode 58. This one is with actress, lyricist, and poet Brandy Payne, aka Lyrically, L-E-E, Lyrically, on social media. Listen, this young lady struck my heart. Actually, I wasn't even expecting to encounter her. I was watching The Real. For those of you who don't know that show, it's a show that comes on, I believe, Fox Network, and it's with the 4 young ladies who they have a panel, and they had this young lady on there who was talking about her experience and how she won a gift. She won something on there that ultimately helped her, in her life. She won some type of bag, expensive purse. But unbeknownst to the host, she was actually in a place where she needed the money because she was homeless, living out of her car, and at some point, I think a friend of hers got some tickets and decided to invite her to the show because they wanted to just do something nice for her. But they didn't know that this woman who was playing the game on the show and won this particular bag was a woman who was homeless, living out of her car, and was at a very bad place in her life. And she won that bag and found out the retail value of it, and she turned around, sold the bag, and was able to get some money in order to get herself an apartment and it was just an amazing, remarkable story. And she came back to tell her that testimony on the show, and that was the episode I saw. I didn't see the episode that she won the bag. I didn't see that. I was just sitting there and was watching the show when she came back to share her testimony, and I'm listening. And those of you who have been in TV, radio, or any kind of broadcast media, you understand that there's very limited time to talk and share your story and all that stuff. And she had, a brief moment to tell her testimony, but as I was listening, I was looking at her, and I said, I could see the passion and I can see the depth of what she had to offer. And because of the time frame, she didn't have the time to really get into it and tell the fullness of her story. She just pretty much talked about winning the bag and being able to sell it and get the money to get herself an apartment and kind of get herself a jump start there in Los Angeles. So I said, you know what? I told my team, I said, we got to reach out to this young lady. I didn't even know how to reach out to her, but hey, we found her. We reached out to her, emailed her. She responded immediately, and 2 days later, we released an episode with her titled Learning to Walk on Water. And I'm telling you, you need to listen to this episode. If you are one who has ever been in a position where you feel like nothing is going right in your life, or things have just made a turn for the worse and you just can't find your way, this episode will help encourage you and give you hope in order to keep pushing and keep moving, because you never know where your next breakthrough is coming. And little did she know, when her friend invited her to come be on the show with her as an audience member, just sitting in the audience enjoying the show, little did she know that she would win a bag that would ultimately get her hundreds, I believe, couple thousand of dollars, in order to help her jumpstart her life and get herself someplace to stay. She shares all of her story and all of the many things that she went through and how she overcame. I mean, not only the homelessness, but how she got into the acting and poetry and lyricist work that she does, and how she was challenged not only in her professional life but in her sexual life. She had been a gay woman for many years, and she was driven and to deliverance ultimately, because she said she just knew this lifestyle wasn't for her. She just one day, I mean, she goes into the story, and it is a remarkable story and a remarkable testimony on how that happened. And she ultimately turned her life around and is now not practicing that lifestyle. She has chosen to denounce that lifestyle and live a life of heterosexually. So she has an amazing story, and I thought that was something that I definitely should put on my list, because many times we have celebrities and big people on the show, and that's great, but it's not so often we have just regular everyday people or people who are on their way to greatness, because I believe she's definitely on her way to greatness. We very rarely have them on the show telling their story, and this is one that I think everyone will enjoy, and everyone will find a token of inspiration and hope out of. Learning to Walk on Water. That's with Brandy Payne, episode 58. Number 3 on the list, episode 56, Dating Essentials. Now, this episode very easily could have been number 1 for me, for so many reasons. But I put it at number 3 only because the number 1 kind of overshadowed this one, for other reasons as well, which I'll share once I get to that episode. But number 3, Dating Essentials with Susan Winter, who is a life and love coach. I mean, this lady is just dynamite when it comes to relationships and love. She shared so many nuggets. Ladies, I'm telling you, you must go listen to this. If you are in that dating scene, if you are in that place in your life where you're trying to find your way in relationships and trying to find the man of your dreams and your husband, she has some essentials that you must take heed to. And I believe that you will definitely be better because of it. There are many things that she mentioned in the episode, but there are a couple that really stood out to me, and I'll tell you why. She talks about founded and unfounded jealousy. And she says that founded jealousy is jealousy, of course, that is hinged on things that are apparent, things that you have physically have as evidence for, and unfounded jealousy is just things that are based on your nervousness, your own insecurities and things of that nature. And she talked about how ladies sometimes have unfounded jealousy, and they put this pressure on their mate because of their own personal insecurities, and unfounded jealousy is ultimately he comes home late one night and you just automatically accuse him of being with another woman, or he's texting a business partner maybe at an hour that you think is obscene, and you automatically assume that it's another woman, or any little thing, and any little thing that just can disrupt your thought process based on him as a man or being faithful to you in that relationship. And she talked about how many times that unfounded jealousy is based on because the women invest too much time in the man. And I said, wow, that's remarkable, because women don't think like that. They think that that's what they're supposed to do. And I think because women love hard, they oftentimes don't realize that they put a lot of energy into their mate or into a dating relationship that they probably should reserve for themselves. And she talked about how you oftentimes spend a lot of your energy investing in him and thinking about him and making him the priority and making him more important than all the other things in your life or all of the other desires and dreams and goals that you have in your life. She talked about how that can be unhealthy and how that alone can fuel insecurity. And I said, wow. So that means that the more energy, the more time, the more priority that you put into making him happy or trying to serve him and trying to love him or trying to do this and be all of this to him. Not saying that you shouldn't, but that you must also place yourself in priority as well. But many women fail to do that until they get to the point where their heart is broken, and what I've learned is that many women don't realize that most men, not all, but most men don't want a woman that makes them their everything. And when I say about makes them their everything, I mean makes them their all end all be all. They can't move, breathe, do anything without this man. And many women would say, and I know you're probably saying it, oh, I don't do that. I don't believe in that. Well, you say that, but your actions or behavior says something totally different, and you don't really realize it until you see yourself in a position where things didn't work out, or he did something that you thought, he would never do, or etc. But I believe if women learned how to balance that, and I don't mean being cold-shouldered, I don't mean being disengaged or uninterested or playing the hard to get. Just genuinely live your life. Genuinely find out what it is that you want. Find out what it is that you need in order to fulfill your life personally. And access those things. Move on them. Chase your dreams, your goals, and your desires. Not saying that he should not be one of them, but I'm saying that don't lose yourself in him so much so that now you feeling like because most men are not going to stop living their lives for the woman. Now they'll place you in and prioritize you within their world, but they're not going to cut themselves or cease to fulfill their personal goals in order to make you happy. You know what I'm saying? They're going to find a way to balance you. And I think if women find a way to balance the two, they can ultimately live in a place where they don't have to be insecure. Because if it be true that this behavior fuels insecurity, then now you are putting yourself in an unhealthy position. You're putting yourself in a place where now you are only digging a hole that ultimately you're going to fall into, but it's only because of your own action. You know what I'm saying? You can't blame it on him because you chose to make him your everything. And I think that's the wrong thing to do, even in marriage. And some would disagree with this. Even in marriage, oftentimes we're talking about dating in this particular episode, but even in marriage, I believe there is a fine line between being devoted and loving and faithful and loyal and forgetting about yourself and forsaking yourself and finding yourself lost in another person. I think there's a fine line between that. And I think that so many married couples end up in turmoil because they chose to put their everything in their mate and forgot about themselves. You know what I'm saying? And my philosophy is this. You can't be whole and love me. You know what I'm saying? You can't be broken and love me properly. You understand what I'm saying? And if there are things that you have that you desire in life, you know what I'm saying? You have to fulfill those in order for you yourself to feel that wholeness. And in your wholeness, then you can love me. You know what I'm saying? You can't love me partially, broken, you know what I'm saying? And vice versa. So what that means is, it doesn't mean that you have to wait until you achieve this great goal in order to get married. It just means that once you decide to do that, you find a partner that's willing to support you in that goal or support you in that dream. And guess what? You put all of your goals, dreams, and desires on the table, and you guys support one another in those things. Now, in some cases, it may be timing may be a lot for one person to do or to pursue first, and then the other can come up fulfilling the rear. You know what I'm saying? And then sometimes you will find find couples that will say, hey, you know what, I'll stop doing this and help you do that in order for you to get what you need, because what you're doing is more important, or the position that you're in has greater risk. You know what I'm saying? Because now you are in a place where you both can benefit, and if I can help you get here, then ultimately I can pursue or find my place within that, so there's so many layers to that. But ultimately she talked about founded and unfounded jealousy, and she talked about a few other things that I think are amazing. And I do think that everyone who is in a relationship, whether you're married, single, dating, whatever, listen to that episode. I think you'll find something key to help you in your pursuit for relationship. All right, number 2 on the list. We're almost down. Episode number 54. Second to the last. This one is with Rebecca Cruz, who is the wife of Terry Crews. That episode is titled Maintaining a Healthy Marriage in Hollywood. Now, this was number 2 for me. Just so happened that it fell right behind the Dating Essentials. But this is Maintaining a Healthy Marriage in Hollywood with Rebecca Cruz. Now, I have an interesting story on how I met Rebecca. Rebecca was a bridesmaid at a couple friends of mine's wedding. They actually were married 10 years, and they renewed their vows because they didn't have a big wedding, or they didn't have a wedding at all when they first got married. But they always said that, they would do one 10 years later. They were both in a position where they were still trying to reach and obtain their goals. And he promised her, he said, okay, if we do this, just do this small, and then we can do a big wedding in 10 years. So that's what they did. And that 10-year wedding, I was on the staff for that wedding, and when I say staff, I was the stylist for the bride, and she was in the wedding party, Rebecca. And of course, behind the scenes, we were laughing and chopping it up. Just so happened to find out that Rebecca was a hairstylist as well back in the day, and from Michigan, which is my hometown, and a lot of similarities and common traits there. And we just had a great time chopping it up and just learning about one another, and just having a good time in that moment. Her and her husband were so gracious and so kind and good people. But that was our interesting story. But I picked this episode for number 2 because I think that so many times there's a mentality that makes that people think that Hollywood is just full of broken marriages and relationships. And though that is what the media portrays, I know for sure several couples who are yet happily married, and they're maintaining not only a happy but a healthy marriage in Hollywood, but of course those people don't get the spotlight. Those people don't get the media attention, because the media ultimately will focus on the drama, the negativity. But these couples, and Terry and Rebecca being one of them, are couples that I have met personally who are doing their thing and doing it God's way in Hollywood, which I think deserves an applause, and it deserves recognition, but she talks about some of the struggles that they had. She doesn't paint this picture of a perfect marriage. She even talks about how, why, marriage in Hollywood, and just relationship period in Hollywood, can be a very strenuous and ultimately, defeated task, because of the nature of the business. There are very few people in Hollywood that work on the acting and all that side of it who stay in one place for any length of time. They're always gone, always back and forth, and it often makes it difficult to maintain a healthy marriage, whether it be because of the temptation, or whether it be because people get distracted, or other people feel neglected, or whether it be because whatever it may be, but ultimately she said how there must be a resolve in your heart, and ultimately the Lord must be at the center of your marriage in order for it to last. Not just in Hollywood, because I know people who are just live regular lives, and maybe the husband has a job where he has to travel often. He's not in Hollywood per se, but he might be in sales, or he might be in ministry, or what have you. And it may cause him to have to travel a lot, and be gone days or weeks at a time. Those type of people can have the same issues. They can have the same concerns that ultimately break up marriages or relationships. So it's not just in Hollywood. Hollywood is just given the kind of the platform to where we see it a lot, but it can happen across the board. So what it ultimately says is that we must have a resolve in our relationship, and that resolve must be the decision to love, and not just the decision to love, but we almost ultimately must have an understanding between the two people, that, okay, when you marry me, you understand where I am, you understand the position that I'm in, and we have an agreement. We have a spoken and even sometimes written understanding as to what our partnership is about, because I don't care what anybody says. Marriage is first a business. Marriage is not marriage. In my opinion, it is introduced by love and the desire and the passion and all of that good stuff. But when it boils down, it's a business, and it's a partnership, a life partnership. And we must understand that both parties play a role in this business. You know what I'm saying? So that means that we have to have an understanding. So if you're getting married and you think that it's all about love and for him to just adore you and sex you up and do all this stuff and just all of this passion, and that's a part of it. But when it boils down, baby girl or baby boy, you're going to have to learn how to be mature and be a businessman or businesswoman and run that marriage so that it is successful, and this is ultimately what I've learned in this, because I have a mentor who's been married over 40 years. He's retired now, but he works in the Hollywood. They live in Hollywood. He and his wife, his children are grown now, but they live in Hollywood, and he's retired from the business now. But he talked to me about, and we sat in his living room and we talked for hours about how he and his wife had to early on set an agreement. When he years ago got the opportunity to enter into Hollywood and work on movies and do all that kind of stuff, he had to be gone weeks and sometimes months at a time. And he had to come and sit down and talk to his wife and say, okay, are you going to be able to be okay with this? And she said, yes. She understood the nature of the business. She understood the love that he had, and she trusted him. And they were able to make that arrangement work for 40 plus years. And when I talk about the arrangement, I'm talking about how he had to be gone away out of the country sometimes for weeks, even months at a time on movie sets. And if you've ever worked on a movie set, you know that it could be, some movies can take months to shoot, and you might have to go to some rural area in God only knows where, and you'll be away from your family and everybody for that however length of time that you need to fulfill that contract. Ultimately, yes, the money is amazing, but it can be a burden on your relationship if both parties are not in agreement. But what his wife said, she understood, and she said, okay, I'll take care of the family. So he had to have the security in his heart to know that his children are being taken care of, that his wife was okay with him being gone for hours, days, weeks, months at a time, and she ran that household. And he said to me, he said, I would not have been able to do my job if it had not been for my wife being understanding and knowing that I was depending on her, because I was concerned about my children being taken care of properly. I didn't want my children not to be neglected, So, and ultimately, if she had taken a position that, oh, I hate he gone, if she had this animosity and ultimately resentment towards him because of his profession, it would have ultimately disrupted her ability to raise the kids properly and to properly see after them. It would have disrupted all of that, which ultimately would have backfired on him and destroyed the marriage, the family, and everything. But she had an understanding, he had an understanding, and they both held their end of the bargain. And to this day, they are together. Their kids are grown. They are living well. And when I say well, I mean well, because she played her role in the position and he did his, and now today he's retired 40 something years later after being in the business 40 something years. And baby, they don't have to worry about a thing. They don't worry about anything because he made God only knows how many millions of dollars, doing what he did. And it was a sacrifice for both of them, but they knew the end goal. And they knew that if they could just endure that and hold up their end of the bargain, that one day they would get to the place where they would be able to appreciate or be able to even marvel and enjoy the fruit of their labor. And this day they are doing just that. And maintaining a marriage in Hollywood is not impossible. Maintaining a marriage in Iowa, however you say it, it's not impossible. Ultimately, it's based on the two people involved and the agreement that they have and the commitment they have to the agreement. So you can't be selfish. It can't be all about your needs and your desires and what you want. And I want him here with me and laying next to me. Because if you're going to succeed in this life partnership and this business called marriage and this institution called marriage, you're going to have a plan, and you're going to have to be committed to fulfilling your end of the bargain. So I didn't went on a tangent on that, but I'm telling you, it's something beneficial to all of us, especially those who are wanting and desiring to be married and still live a successful and somewhat great, fulfilled life. Check out that episode 54. With Rebecca Cruz, wife of Terry Crews. She talks about many of the things that they went through in their marriage and how they got out of it. We know here recently he has spoken out about some allegations with one of the big execs there in Hollywood, and that's, she doesn't really mention that in the episode, but that's just another thing that they've had to endure together, because quite naturally, if he had reacted the way that many say he should have, it would have ultimately possibly disrupted his entire career and tore up his family. So she supported him in that action. And from what I understand, and this is just a sidebar, she was the one who ultimately calmed him down in order to get him to react in a calm manner and walk away from the situation versus being what most think he should have been, which is, you sock that man, you should have knocked him out, all that kind of stuff, and ultimately he could have did that and maybe should have, but would it have been the best situation? That goes back to my episode with my girl, Sherry Riley. She had to bring him to a place of peace so that he could think clearly, get clarity, and take the courage that he need to walk away from the situation. And now he's in a position where he could very well see justice, within that situation because of the era that we are in now with the Me Too. So that's a whole nother subject and a whole nother topic, but check out the episode, Maintaining a Healthy Marriage in Hollywood. It will help you. And I'm telling you, you don't have to be in Hollywood in entertainment business to benefit from this episode. There are many nuggets and tools that you can use just in life in general and in marriage anywhere that you may reside. So it brings us to our number one episode, and this is my top pick. It's episode 51, Embracing Entrepreneurship with Tracy Lynn, Dr. Tracy Lynn. This was my number one for many reasons, and one, because I'm an entrepreneur myself, and I have such a passion for entrepreneurship and seeing people really birth out their entrepreneurial goals. And she talks about so many things. She goes on to her story and how she was 4 years old working with her grandmother in business and counting money, 4 years old. Collecting money from tenants and etc. How she got into the hair business, but became a boutique owner, and ultimately in 1989 started her Tracy Lynn Fashion Jewelry, which has now become what many of you know as the big brand Tracy Lynn Jewelry. So I mean, this episode is amazing. She talks about how she was kind of thrusted into this entrepreneurship, and she said it was because she got a job, and this is after she had worked in hair and had her own boutique before, and she got a job in, I believe, marketing, and was falling asleep on the job, and she said she one day came to a realization that there has to be more to life than this, and I know there are so many people who have asked themselves that question. I've asked myself that question in many instances. And she said that question is what led her to ultimately walk away from that job and move into her entrepreneurial goals. And it was all because she suffered from just pure boredom, and I think people that suffer with that ultimately have so many gifts that have yet to be unearthed, and so many talents that they have yet to fulfill and realize, so they become bored because they're not activating those things. You know what I'm saying? And she chose to walk away and activate those gifts in her life. And I asked her a poignant question. I said, well, how does one do that? I said, because that's easier said than done, because many have that question. They said they say that very thing, there must be more to life than this. But transitioning from that question to actually making action and moving to the areas of the life that they want to move into is a very different conversation. And see, she said many things that I know that you'll be blessed by if you listen. But she said you have to decide. You have to decide that you want more and go after it. You have to ultimately find your gifts. And she said how your gifts are things that come easy for you. And ultimately, sometimes people miss their gift because it is so easy to them. And when you find that gift, is it something you have to ask your question? Is it something that you would do, whether you were getting paid or not? You know what I'm saying? And she said, ultimately, if that answer is yes, then you found that thing that is what some would say that sweet spot. You found that place that you can now practice, and in order to get to the place where you can monetize on it. And she said you must practice the gift once you discover it, and eventually you'll be able to make money from that very thing that you said you would do, whether you were getting paid or not. And that is ultimately the gift that God has given you. And she said, which was so key, she said, we don't have any say so in what our gift is. And I said, wow, that is true. She said, you may want to do this, but that may not be your gifting. You may have a desire to do this, but that may not be your gifting. She said, ultimately, your gift is something that you overlook. Typically, you don't really hold in high esteem. It's a trait, quality, or talent that you kind of sometimes don't even really recognize because it's just that easy to you. She said, find that thing, pursue that thing. And she said you will eventually find that the entrepreneurial dreams will begin to unfold in your life. She says so many amazing things. She even talked about how once you get to the place where you're starting to make money and starting to fulfill your goals and starting to see your entrepreneurial dreams come to life, she talked about how you must get to the place where now you are respecting your business and your craft and your gift so much so that you will put the proper people in place in order to see that thing to its fullness, and what she meant by that is pretty much you might have to stop hiring, your down home friend to do stuff for you. You might have to stop hiring the neighborhood electrician to come hook up your stuff. You might have to stop hiring cousin Pete and them to come and hook up your illegal cable in your business. Whatever the case may be, you might have to stop going to the corner H&R Block or whoever to do your taxes. You might have to start investing more in certain areas in order to see your entrepreneurial goals and dreams come to their true fruition, and I thought that was so key because so many times, and I've even been guilty, we try to go with the cheapest or go with who can give us the hookup. And sometimes the hookup ain't always the best. Sometimes the hookup can mess us up, and that helps us to know that we sometimes you might have to just pay some money and get the proper help, the professional help you need in order to take that thing to the next level. So Tracy Land, I mean, I met her through a colleague, and when I tell you our first meeting, there's sometimes when you meet people and you just know that there's a common energy, a common thread, just something about them leaps, something about them leaps in you and vice versa. That was the experience I had with Dr. Tracy Lynn. The initial meeting was just, it was just magical, and we did our interview, and we talked for a very long time over the phone after the interview. And when I tell you, she was very gracious. Now, this is somebody who is doing millions of dollars across the country, across the world, because she's opened up in several markets outside of the United States. And needless to say, her time is money, but when she was speaking with me, it was as if the world had stopped. It was as if I was the most important thing at that moment. And I know that it was only a God encounter, because there are not many people who would take the time to share and to pour into people just off a rip, without trying to charge them a coaching fee or some type of honorarium or whatever, and this was just off the rip, after the interview was done, and I shared a few things with her, and she shared with me, and she told me some things, asked me some questions, challenged me, and I'm telling you, when I got off the phone with her, I was better because of meeting her. And I can truly say that this woman is a woman of integrity, a woman who has not only done it, but is helping and showing and really pouring into people all over the world, teaching them how to do it for themselves. And that type of thing is only a God gift. It's only a gift from God that you can be able to share and pour and really help where help is needed, because there are many people who walk past or walk by and they see the help that's needed and they're able to help, but they don't. So she was my top episode, not just because she shared some great nuggets and some great key things that I know every aspiring entrepreneur will benefit from, but because she genuinely wanted to help and wanted to share her experiences in order to help another man or woman pursue theirs. So, Embracing Entrepreneurship with Dr. Tracy Lynn, episode 51. That was our top episode for 2017. So I'm hoping that this year has been a blessing for you. And I know that I've taken up a lot of time with this episode, but I just thought it was good for me to share with you what it is that I've learned and some of the stories that I may have had with the guest and how I met them and what encounters we had and et cetera, et cetera. And I hope you're able to take something away from that and, just hear my heart and what it is that I want and desire for you as the listener, because I don't just reach out to guests just to reach out to them. I don't have guests on just to have them on. Everybody that I interview, I am genuinely interested in and want to learn more of whatever it is that I'm trying to learn in that particular episode. So I hope that you feel that, hear that, and take that away as you listen to the episodes. And just know we have some amazing things still yet to come in 2018. We are, I believe, at our 67th episode, maybe 66. I don't have my log in front of me, but we're right in the 60s of our episodes. And we are, and I'll just share this with you, we're striving this year, 2018, to get to our 100th episode. And I'm telling you, when we get to our 100th episode, we're going to plan something very special that we think will be dynamite, for not only you, but the brand and the listeners, the guests, everybody. We want to plan something very special. So we're striving to get there, and we're going to get there as quick as we can. We're hoping to get there before the close of 2018. And it'll be an amazing, that 100th episode will be something very dynamite and remarkable. So we hope that this year finds you in a place of blessing and finds you encouraged so that you can take what you've heard, learned, and perceived by listening to these episodes and put it to action in order to fulfill your own personal life and goals and dreams and aspirations, and just get the tools you need to just live life to the fullest, man. Just live life and live it to the best. So we thank you for listening as always, and we will be back with you in 2018 with some more great content. And do email me and leave me some messages to let me know what it is that you want to hear, or what it is that you've taken away, or how you've been encouraged, blessed, or helped, or what have you with some of our episodes. I love to hear your feedback. That helps us to guides us in the content and helps us to create more content that will bless you ultimately. So we thank you for listening once again, and we hope to see you, hear from you, and share with you once again in the very near future. This has been the Build on Beauty podcast, where beauty is born skin deep. I'm your host, Cornell Jermaine. Until next time, let your soul be made whole. Take care.
Thank you for listening to the Build on Beauty podcast. For more information about our host, please visit CornellJermaine.com.